This is the part of a live TV broadcast during the Apollo 17 mission where astronaut Harrison Schmitt is taking a panorama of the lunar surface. The reason for his contortions is where he is standing, halfway up a hill. The problem is the camera, which is strapped to Schmitt's chest, forcing him to lean back to capture anything at a higher elevation. The result is pretty amazing when you consider Schmitt has little idea what's in the frame at any point because the camera has no viewfinder. However, the real problem facing Schmitt, literally, is the sun. At least it should be. So where exactly is the sun? The lens flare in this photo gives an indication. It's somewhere here. And the Apollo 17 index of photographs confirms this photo was taken using the 60mm lens at Geology Station 6 during EVA 3 when the sun was at an elevation of 36 degrees. According to Zeiss, the lens field of view is 47 degrees. So, putting this all together, the sun in this photo would appear round about here. By the way, that's how big it would appear to the naked eye, at least before it burnt through your retinas. If looking at the sun is bad enough here on Earth, where its light has been filtered through layers of water vapour, you can only imagine how much worse it must be in space where there is no natural protection. Which is the reason why astronaut helmets are fitted with a separate gold-plated visor. Try telling that to astronaut Harrison Jack Schmitt. Because throughout this clip, not only is his protective visor up, at the start he's staring into the sun. In this scene, the front half of his body is in sunlight as he leans back 18 degrees. However, the lunar buggy from which the live TV broadcast was captured was itself tilted at 7 degrees in the opposite direction. So Schmitt was in fact leaning back a total of 25 degrees, which means he was looking almost directly into the sun. Though Schmitt might not be worried, or even aware that his visor was up, it didn't escape the attention of Capcom back in Mission Control.
Hey, Jack, can we see your gold visor up? You may want to put it down out here in the sun.
For some reason the video cuts off at this point, but we can still listen to Schmitt's reply in audio from the flight journal.
Well, I think I can't see with it down, it's scratched.
It's a wonder you can see anything at all after staring into the sun, Jack. And not just light from the sun, all those X-rays as well. Now it could be that Schmitt had his eyes closed while taking the photos, although that's highly unlikely given how well the panorama turned out. Not that it matters, because it wasn't the first time and wouldn't be the last time Schmitt had his visor up while performing tasks where he had to have his eyes open to be able to see what he was doing. Here he is on the previous day at Station 4, gold visor up, when the sun was at an even lower 27 degrees above the horizon. You can see it reflected in his helmet and shining on his face. Here as well you can see the sun shining on Schmitt's face. And again here as he seems to make a point of staring directly at the camera. And here Schmitt's entire face is exposed to the sun as he goes about his work. Notice as well the size of the sun reflected in Schmitt's helmet. Though the sun is more than 100 times as wide as the Earth, it doesn't appear that big in the sky because it's 93 million miles away. It's small enough to hide behind the moon during an eclipse, and you can easily block it out with your thumb at arm's length. So what about when it's reflected? In this photo you can clearly see the size of the sun reflected in an astronaut's helmet. Even here, the sun appears larger than it actually is because the Earth's atmosphere diffuses the light. But there's no atmosphere on the moon, so could it be the gold-plated visor that's diffusing the light to make it look bigger? Not in this case, because Schmidt's visor is up and the sun is being reflected in the clear dome of his helmet. So why exactly does the sun appear much larger than normal? The answer is because it's that big. At least it is in NASA photos from Apollo missions to the lunar surface. Something that should occupy half of 1 degree of arc has grown 1,000 times in size. Now let's listen as Schmidt describes the view while standing on the moon.
As I said, deeper than the Grand Canyon, brilliantly illuminated by the sun, more brilliantly even than a desert sun that I was used to out in New Mexico. And also, but placed against a blacker than black sky. That, I think, was the hardest thing to get used to. Because here on Earth, when you have a brilliant sun, you have a blue sky. Well, the sky around the moon was black.
So he remembers how the sky was blacker than black, and the sun was more brilliant than he was used to in New Mexico, but no mention of how it appeared so much larger than normal. And how the hell was he able to look at this view with his bare eyes on the moon when he needed sunglasses during field trips back on Earth? Because he was never there, and this isn't the sun.
Our director of photography, Gail Tattersall, has created an amazing sun effect, which is really what sells this as being real. I would say the light that we have created to simulate the sun on the moon is probably one of the single brightest light sources ever created for anything.
And this is the result they were looking for, the brightest source of light in the smallest possible space. Tattersalls' novel solution to the issues of size and intensity was to train 20 xenon lamps onto a single point, a 6-foot convex mirror, which is a major improvement over NASA's own attempts during filming of the Apollo lunar landings. However, another unique feature of light from the distant sun is that shadows cast on the Earth and Moon appear parallel compared to those from a smaller and much closer light source. To recreate this natural phenomenon would take a light at least as wide as the studio, but it would also have to be placed far enough away to appear as small as the sun. For example, if the set used in From the Earth to the Moon was 180 feet wide, and the 6-foot mirror used to recreate the sun was 150 feet from the camera, Tattersall would have needed a mirror 900 times as big at a distance of 4,500 feet away. And at that distance, it would have required a staggering 18,000 xenon lamps to recreate the same intensity of light. But whatever lights NASA used to recreate their supernova sun effect in a studio back in 1972, it evidently wasn't strong enough to deter Schmidt from looking directly at it. But why only him? Why don't we see the faces of any of the other Apollo astronauts who also set foot on the moon? In total, these 12 men stayed almost 300 hours on the moon, more than 80 hours of which were spent outside. Though every astronaut can be identified by face in either the hours of footage captured live on TV or in 16mm movies while inside the command module, or the lunar module prior to separation for landing on the moon, Schmidt is the only one who can be identified on the lunar surface, that too only during live TV broadcasts from outside the lunar module. To my knowledge, none of the astronauts can be identified by face in any photo taken on the lunar surface, not even Schmidt, who NASA claims is the man in this spacesuit. And though these 4 astronauts were photographed inside a lunar module, as Schmidt himself confesses,
Yours truly, it doesn't prove I was on the moon.
which is a really strange thing to say when there's no doubt in most people's minds that you actually walked on the moon. Or is it?
It doesn't prove I was on the moon.
If this is the only piece of evidence that links Schmidt to the greatest hoax in human history, which it is, by his own admission, it's insufficient to convict him of that crime.
It doesn't prove I was on the moon.
Which is possibly why none of the other astronauts, all of whom had served in the US military, were willing to show their faces while bouncing around a TV studio pretending to be on the moon. Had the truth come out, they would probably have been court-martialed for their part in the hoax.
You can't handle the truth!
But it's not the only evidence, is it, Jack? We've seen your face numerous times live on TV from the moon. Or have we? Because if the man in the spacesuit here really is Harrison Schmitt, far from ever setting foot on the moon, he could never have been aboard Apollo 17.
We're watching you, Jack.
What's that?
I said we're watching you, but don't let that inhibit you.
Bob, I don't let anything inhibit me. And I don't stay mad very long.
That was very good.
Well, there's an easy way to do everything.
Pretending you're on the moon sure is easier than going there in person, but the laws of physics still apply when you're in a studio, and y'all just broke the law.
We had pickup from the ASW carrier Ticonderoga, and now if you want to know who's who, this almost certainly is me because I have black hair. It doesn't prove I was on the moon.